Every single morning, as the first rays of a golden sun break through the morning haze of Bengaluru, a human tidal wave begins to move. Among them is Ravi, a 26-year-old software engineer. He stands packed shoulder to shoulder inside a commuter train heading straight into the heart of India's technological miracle. To the untrained eye, Ravi is just one face among a billion. But to understand his journey is to understand the tectonic shift of an entire civilization. Only 30 years ago, Ravi's father stood in a completely different world. He woke up long before dawn, not to sync code with global servers, but to push a heavy wooden cart through the mud, selling fresh vegetables in a crowded open market. He measured his daily success in rupees that barely covered the cost of evening lentils. Today, his son Ravi sits in an air-conditioned glass tower, working for a multinational tech conglomerate. He earns a salary that his father's generation would have considered an absolute mathematical impossibility. He does not just participate in the global economy, he helps build its digital backbone. Ravi's story is not an isolated anomaly. It is the living, breathing reality of a massive, unstoppable generational leap that is rewriting the rules of global economics. Look at the international economic charts today, and you will see a fundamentally different story unfolding than that of the past century. The historic giant has not just woken up, it is sprinting. India has transformed into the fastest-growing major economy on the entire planet. It is a nation that is aggressively lifting millions out of subsistence living, breaking old colonial shackles, and positioning itself as a crucial node in the future of artificial intelligence, global supply chains, and digital infrastructure. Beneath this sparkling narrative of high-rise tech parks and multi-billion-dollar startup valuations lies a deeply complex, pressing question. How did a nation that was near economic collapse just 3 decades ago achieve this historic turnaround? What were the hidden gears that accelerated this massive transformation? And most importantly, as India surpasses every other nation to become the most populous country on Earth, can this hyper-growth bridge the profound chasms that still remain? Will this digital bounty reach the hundreds of millions who still live in the quiet, dusty villages far away from the neon lights of the tech hubs? To understand the future of our globalized world, we must understand the mechanics behind the rise of the world's most populous economy. To step into any Indian metropolis today is to experience an overwhelming assault on the senses, a dense, chaotic, yet strangely harmonious symphony of human activity. In Mumbai, the financial heartbeat of the nation, the local trains carry over 7 million passengers every day. They form a human conveyor belt that pumps labor into the city's economic engine. On the asphalt below, traditional three-wheeled auto rickshaws, painted in bright yellow and black, weave aggressively through traffic jams, fighting for space alongside luxury electric sedans. This is a society where multiple centuries exist simultaneously in the exact same street corner. Walk down a crowded alleyway in Delhi, and you will smell the rich, pungent aromas of spices being roasted in an open-air market that has operated since the Mughal Empire. But look closer at the storefronts. Right next to a merchant weighing sacks of raw turmeric on an old iron scale, there is a small, laminated square piece of paper containing a QR code. Even the poorest street vendors, selling everything from handmade jasmine garlands to fried street food, no longer handle physical cash. Instead, transactions occur instantly through a seamless, mobile-first digital payment system. The domestic worker, the corporate executive, and the teenage student all use the same digital rails to navigate their daily lives, ordering groceries that arrive at their doorstep via motorcycle in less than 10 minutes. At the core of this hypervelocity lifestyle is the changing Indian household. For centuries, the multi-generational joint family was the non-negotiable bedrock of society. Grandparents, parents, uncles, and children all lived under one roof, sharing resources and survival strategies. While this traditional structure remains vital in rural areas, urban India is witnessing the dramatic rise of a highly ambitious, fiercely independent middle class. This demographic is expanding at an unprecedented rate, filling the newly constructed suburban high-rises that circle cities like Noida, Gurugram, and Pune. This burgeoning middle class is driven by a singular, non-negotiable cultural obsession: education and hyper-competition. From a moment an Indian child enters the school system, they are placed into an academic crucible. The competition is intense and unforgiving. Millions of teenagers spend years studying 15 hours a day, locking themselves in small coaching rooms to prepare for highly competitive entrance exams for engineering and management institutes. They know with absolute certainty that scoring a fraction of a percentage higher can mean the difference between financial security for their entire extended family or falling back into economic stagnation. This fierce, relentless drive has created an army of young professionals who are hyper-specialized in information technology, engineering, data analytics, and corporate management. They are the human fuel powering India's domestic tech startups and global corporate offices. Yet, this urban economic miracle represents only one side of a profoundly divided coin. Just an hour's drive outside the gleaming tech parks of Bengaluru or the glass financial centers of Mumbai, the concrete gives way to a completely different reality. India's rural heartland is home to hundreds of millions of people whose lives are still fundamentally dictated by the unpredictable cycles of the monsoon rains and the harsh, unforgiving realities of agrarian economics. In these quiet, dusty villages, the digital revolution feels distant. While a young professional in a metro city complains about a slow internet connection slowing down their food delivery app, a farmer in rural Bihar or Madhya Pradesh is staring at a dry, cracked patch of land, wondering if they can afford the rising cost of diesel seeds and fertilizers. The historic wealth gap between urban centers and rural villages remains one of the most defining and dangerous contradictions of modern India. It is a stark reminder that while the nation's economic statistics are soaring on the global stage, the lived experience of its population remains deeply fractured. Millions are still standing on the periphery, watching the great economic train rush past, waiting for their chance to finally climb aboard.
Jaldi chalo, maal uthao.
To understand how India arrived at this delicate, hyperkinetic present, one must look deep into the scars and structural foundations of its history. India's modern economic journey began in the shadow of profound trauma. For nearly 2 centuries, the British East India Company and the British Raj systematically dismantled India's traditional economic structures. When the British first arrived in the 17th century, India accounted for nearly a quarter of the entire global economy, celebrated worldwide for its world-class textiles, shipbuildings, and advanced agricultural exports. By the time the British left in August 1947, they left behind a nation systematically bled dry. India's share of global GDP had plummeted to less than 4%. The new sovereign nation was born in the middle of the chaotic, bloody violence of partition, inheriting an illiterate population, severe recurring famines, and an almost complete absence of heavy industrial infrastructure. The nation's founding fathers, led by India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, faced an existential challenge. How do you govern and feed a massive, deeply impoverished, and highly diverse population without falling back into the traps of foreign exploitation? Their solution was a highly cautious, inward-looking economic model heavily inspired by Soviet-style planned economics. The government established strict state control over core industries, including steel, power, aviation, and telecommunications. To protect fragile domestic businesses, they erected massive tariff walls, making it nearly impossible for foreign goods or capital to enter the country. This period became famously known as the era of the license Raj. Every single economic decision, whether a private factory could expand its production line, import a piece of European machinery, or hire more workers, required a complex, agonizing maze of government permissions, stamps, and bureaucratic approvals. For decades, India's economy remained stable, but painfully slow. The country had built strong institutions, yet innovation struggled under layers of regulation. This protected, state-directed system grew at a slow, frustrating pace often referred to by economists as the Hindu rate of growth, averaging just 3 to 4% annually. While this closed system successfully built a foundational base of heavy manufacturing and elite educational institutions like the Indian Institutes of Technology, it ultimately choked private innovation and consumer choice. By the late 1980s, the inefficiencies of this rigid system caught up with the nation. India was spending far more on imports than it was earning from its heavily restricted exports. In the summer of 1991, the country hit a catastrophic wall. A severe balance of payments crisis left India with barely enough foreign exchange reserves to pay for 2 weeks of essential fuel imports. The nation was on the absolute brink of total financial bankruptcy and international default. In a moment of deep national humiliation, the government had to physically airlift tons of its gold reserves to London and Switzerland as collateral to secure an emergency bailout from the International Monetary Fund. But as the old proverb goes, crisis is the ultimate architect of mutation. Forced by the IMF's strict conditions, the Indian government, led by Prime Minister P. Narasimha Rao and his visionary finance minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, made a historic, irreversible choice. They dismantled the license Raj. With a series of sweeping policy signatures in July 1991, they opened India's doors to the world. They slashed import tariffs, deregulated private industries, devalued the overvalued currency, and allowed foreign direct investment to flow into the country for the first time in generations. The impact was immediate and explosive. It was as if an economic dam had burst. Global brands rushed into the Indian market, creating millions of new corporate jobs. Coincidentally, this massive internal deregulation aligned perfectly with a global technological revolution. The dawn of the internet age and the widespread fear of the Y2K computer bug at the turn of the millennium. Global Western corporations, desperate for affordable, highly skilled English-speaking technical talent to fix their legacy computer systems, looked toward India. Western companies realized that thanks to the country's historical investments in engineering institutes, India possessed a vast, untapped goldmine of technical minds who could do the work at a fraction of Western costs. Domestic tech pioneers like Infosys, Wipro, and TCS seized this moment. They pioneered the global offshore IT delivery model, transforming Indian cities into the remote back offices of the Western corporate world. India bypassed the traditional economic path taken by Western nations and China, which moved sequentially from agriculture to heavy manufacturing and then to services. Instead, India leaped directly from an agrarian-based society straight into a high-value, digital, service-driven powerhouse. History had handed India a unique hand, and a new generation of citizens was ready to play it. Today, India stands as an undeniable, formidable colossus on the global stage. It has officially surpassed China to become the most populous nation on Earth, home to over 1.4 billion individuals, representing roughly 1/6 of all humanity contained within a single sovereign border. This massive population is no longer viewed merely as a demographic challenge. It has become one of the most powerful, disruptive economic growth engines in modern history. Despite all the technological progress, one thing has never changed: family. Whether in a village or a modern apartment in Bengaluru, parents still believe education is the greatest investment they can make for their children. This deep-seated cultural anchor feeds an unstoppable drive for advancement, pushing the nation forward even as society undergoes rapid structural mutations. The absolute epicenter of this modern economic surge is Bengaluru, widely celebrated as the Silicon Valley of Asia. Decades ago, this city was a quiet, sleepy town known primarily for its retirement communities and lush public parks. Today, it is a hyper-dense, high-energy metropolis that serves as the global technological headquarters for the world's leading corporations. Bengaluru's sprawling office parks are hotbeds of cutting-edge research and development, where thousands of local engineers build advanced artificial intelligence models, design high-end semiconductor chips, and manage complex global data clouds. This technological explosion has been supercharged by a revolutionary government initiative known as Digital India. At the core of this transformation is a sophisticated public digital infrastructure built on open-source code. It streamlined national identity through biometric verification and introduced the Unified Payments Interface, or UPI, which completely eliminated the friction of traditional banking. By enabling instant, free mobile money transfers, this new digital economy has brought hundreds of millions of unbanked citizens into the formal financial fold in less than a decade. With these digital rails firmly in place, India's startup ecosystem has exploded, producing dozens of billion-dollar unicorns that are disrupting everything from financial technology to artificial intelligence. Simultaneously, India is aggressively expanding its footprint in the physical world. Amid shifting global geopolitics and a corporate desire to diversify supply chains away from reliance on China, India is emerging as a premier global manufacturing alternative. Under major government incentive programs, global tech giants have shifted significant portions of their advanced smartphone assembly lines to state-of-the-art factories in southern India. The nation's technological pride extends even into deep space. With the historic success of its low-cost Chandrayaan missions landing near the South Pole of the Moon, India's space program proved to the entire world that it could achieve elite, historic scientific milestones at a mere fraction of the budget spent by Western space agencies. Yet, this shiny, hyper-modern facade of space rovers, digital payments, and luxury tech hubs cannot completely obscure the deep structural cracks that continue to challenge Indian society every single day. The country is living through a profound economic paradox. While its top-tier tech billionaires and urban upper-middle class are thriving like never before, the country's GDP per capita remains significantly lower than other major emerging economies. The wealth generated by this historic economic surge remains concentrated in specific urban pockets and among elite segments of the population. The most pressing, politically volatile challenge facing modern India is an acute crisis of jobless growth. Every single month, roughly 1 million young, hopeful Indians turn 18 and enter the national job market. They come armed with degrees, certificates, and immense aspirations. But the high-tech services sector, despite its massive revenues, is highly automated and can only employ a tiny fraction of this massive human wave. The economy is simply not creating enough high-quality, stable, middle-class jobs in manufacturing or construction to absorb the millions of youth transitioning away from traditional village agriculture. Consequently, highly qualified engineering graduates frequently apply by the thousands for low-paying, entry-level government administrative jobs or turn to the unstable gig economy, driving delivery motorcycles just to survive. Furthermore, the physical infrastructure of the country is bucking under the immense weight of its rapid, unplanned urbanization. Major Indian cities regularly rank among the most polluted urban areas on the entire planet. Every winter, a thick, toxic blanket of smog settles over the national capital region of Delhi, closing schools and creating a long-term public health crisis. Public healthcare systems and government hospitals are under immense strain, underfunded and overwhelmed by the sheer volume of patients. Clean drinking water, efficient sewage management, and reliable public housing remain luxury commodities in the vast slums that sit directly in the shadows of luxury corporate offices. India today is a nation running at two wildly different speeds. One part of the population is flying toward a prosperous, high-tech future, while the other is still fighting a desperate, daily battle against the basic, unresolved infrastructure failures of the past. As we look toward the long-term horizon, India stands at a critical historical crossroads. The choices it makes over the next 10 to 20 years will not only dictate the fate of its own one for billion citizens, but will fundamentally reshape the entire landscape of the global economy. India's greatest, most potent weapon for the future is its unique demographic profile. While the major developed economic powers of the West, alongside regional neighbors like China, Japan, and South Korea, are facing severe long-term demographic declines with rapidly aging populations and shrinking workforces, India is remarkably young. Over 60% of the entire Indian population is currently under the age of 25. The country possesses a massive, vibrant, and highly motivated human engine that will remain in its prime productive working years for the next 3 decades. This is an asset that no other major economy possesses. To fully weaponize this demographic dividend, India is attempting a massive structural pivot. The nation is moving aggressively beyond just basic software coding and back-office IT troubleshooting. It is positioning itself as a primary global hub for advanced, high-value industries of the future. The government has poured billions of dollars into semiconductor manufacturing incentives, aiming to establish domestic silicon fabrication plants that will reduce global reliance on fragile technology choke points. Simultaneously, India is undergoing one of the largest, most ambitious green energy transitions in human history. In the vast, sun-drenched deserts of Rajasthan and Gujarat, the country is constructing some of the largest solar power infrastructure installations on the planet, aiming to fuel its massive economic expansion without entirely choking the environment with coal emissions. In the geopolitical arena, India's strategic importance is hitting heights not seen since independence. Positioned perfectly between East and West, India is acting as a crucial diplomatic and economic swing state. As Western multinational corporations actively pursue a China Plus One supply chain strategy, India is building massive new industrial corridors, high-speed rail networks, and deep-water ports to permanently capture this shifting global manufacturing capital. International economists project that if India can maintain its current growth trajectory, it will comfortably surpass Germany and Japan within the decade to become the third largest economy on the entire planet. The opportunity is enormous, but success is far from guaranteed. Yet another challenge is already emerging. If India fails to urgently transform its massive population into a highly skilled, healthy, and gainfully employed workforce, this celebrated demographic dividend could easily mutate into a catastrophic domestic social crisis. The quality of education in thousands of rural schools and Tier 3 colleges remains low, producing graduates who possess theoretical degrees but lack the practical skills required by the modern, AI-driven global marketplace. The high-tech future requires deep analytical capabilities, yet much of the rural talent pipeline remains trapped in outdated learning models. The challenge of climate change also looms large over the nation's future. Rising global temperatures mean that India faces increasingly volatile, extreme weather events, from severe, prolonged heat waves that drop agricultural productivity to catastrophic urban flooding that can paralyze major financial centers overnight. These environmental stresses multiply the strain on already fragile urban infrastructure, threatening to disrupt the very manufacturing hubs India is working so hard to build. The ultimate test for India over the next quarter century is not simply about boosting its headline GDP numbers to impress global investors. The true test is whether the nation can execute an inclusive economic model that converts its raw demographic size into sustainable, widespread wealth. Can India build an economy where a child born in a remote village in Uttar Pradesh has the same access to quality education, clean water, and high-tech career opportunities as a child born in a luxury suburb of Bengaluru? The answer to this question will define the future of the nation. Ultimately, when you strip away the complex economic charts, the multi-billion-dollar corporate valuations, the political rhetoric, and the grand geopolitical predictions, you are left with the true, beating heart of India, its people. India is far more than an exciting headline in a financial magazine, a strategic counterweight on a geopolitical map, or a massive market for multinational corporations to target. It is a living, breathing, deeply resilient human tapestry. It is the story of hundreds of millions of ordinary, everyday citizens who refuse to be defined by the limitations of their past or the structural constraints of their birth. It is the story of the rural father who works grueling 12-hour shifts in the burning heat of a city construction site, enduring every single hardship without complaint, so he can afford to send his daughter to an English medium computer school. It is the story of a young woman from a small provincial town who studies late into the night under the dim light of a single bulb, using a basic smartphone to access global knowledge, determined to become the first engineer in her family's history. It is the story of a population that has known colonial exploitation, severe economic crises, and systemic neglect, yet possesses a stubborn, unyielding collective willpower to innovate, to adapt, and to build a prosperous future from the ground up. The historic rise of India is not a narrative of smooth, flawless perfection. It is a messy, turbulent, and often contradictory journey filled with profound internal struggles, deep inequality, and immense infrastructure challenges. The road ahead remains long, complex, and filled with deep unpredictability. But the transformation that has already occurred over the last 3 decades proves one undeniable, beautiful human truth. The simple, profound desire to learn, to work, and to build a dignified, normal life for one's family is an incredibly powerful force. It is a creative flame that, once lit in the hearts of a young and driven population, can never be extinguished. As the world moves deeper into the complexities of the 21st century, India continues its grand, historic march forward. It is a nation no longer content with just watching the future being written by others. It is a civilization actively picking up the pen, using its immense demographic weight and digital ambition to write its own destiny, and in the process, permanently shaping the future of our global economy.